Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friday Live at 5. I'm so happy to be back doing this again. This week, I wanted to continue with the subject of composition, which was the workshop we did in Washington this past weekend, with this lovely view of a park in Lisbon, courtesy of Pat Gary, a Missouri painter, who was doing some wonderful sketches and paintings from this area. But what I liked about this, other than the fact that it's just a beautiful spot, is that it has some potentially compositional problems, but it's just been laid out in a way, or Pat took the shot in a way that kind of solves them. So we've got this sort of regular beat of objects that go across the bottom and cut, sort of have a tendency to snip things off. But we have mitigating circumstances which tie those things together. These cast shadows tie things together. The darks of the trees create these organic shapes. And then we've got this just off axis lovely plinth with a statue of somebody or something. It's a little unclear what it is. But to establish the draw, the first thing I always do, find my key horizontal and find my key verticals. So, oops. It looks like our horizon is about a third. And I'm working on an 11 by 15 piece of Saunders Waterford cold press, 140 pounds. Then we want to find our key verticals. Here's one, here's one, here's one. They're kind of a group. Got a nice broccoli tree there. Hi, Judy. I'm going to find this one first. It's a little bit tilted, but it's in about a fifth or so. It's very important to note where the bases of these items are. You notice they're not all lined up. It's going to be important to find those. So I'm just going to find a line for that. This comes out about a quarter. It looks like a building of some sort back there. I'm not going to draw the tree shape. This group is in about, again, a quarter. And that statue is at a wonderful, not quite a third, not quite a half, not quite a quarter. It's what Andrew Loomis called informal subdivision. So I'm trying to find the top. There's a figure up there in some kind of cloak. And I've pinch zoomed it out, and I cannot figure out what is going on. It appears to be headless. Now I know there's a legend about some saint that walked up the steps to the top of Montmartre, and then they built Sacré-Cœur there. They cut his head off or something, and then he marched up the hill holding his head, according to the legend. Now, this thing is, note, that building sort of ends there. This is a little bit over. And it's a little bit below the bottom of this tree. Its base appears to be some sort of fence-like thing. There's a tree trunk coming. Now this group, the broccoli tree, there's one that's virtually straight at about the third mark. And again, its base is, this base is below that one, so needs to stop about there. There's one further back. Now see, I've got everything. There's one that's relatively straight here, but its base is below where this one is. This needs to come down further. There's another one of these. They look like parking bollards. Keep cars from driving into the area. There's a stone block, which may serve as a bench even. So it's just a rectangle. And then there is here a tree coming up, which appears to be dead or doesn't have much foliage on it. Tree here. And another one of these block things over here. I guess it goes in a kind of a circular arrangement like that, the plaza, and then more of these parking bollards. There's a lamp post back there, but I'm not sure I want to include that. You don't have to put everything in. Finding the position of these trees is important. Composition. That's the one thing the thing that we concentrated on the weekend, is that composition is all about where and then how big and then what shape. So there seems to be no head on that thing. I don't know. Okay, so at least I've got where these things are going to happen. This tree needs a little bit of drawing. I'm trying to discipline myself to draw things the way they grow, which is like uphill. And theoretically, a tree should be thinner at the top and wider at the bottom. Now there's a very, very distant headland or area of Lisbon there. But like I say, most of these things I want to make happen with paint. I just want to find where they are. That's the important thing compositionally. I tried to get everyone to remember that composition is an 11-letter word and 8 letters spell position. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is yeah, I know, Judy. It's just doesn't seem to be there. I don't know if it's something modern or if it's the person is bending over quite a bit. If we could see it from the other side. Boy, it's a weird thing. So now I have to plan my washes. The sky is there's some clouds. It's primarily blue. I'm just going to do a trend because there's so much business going on here. I don't want to paint clouds and things. So I'm going to transition down from a blue to a very pale burnt sienna, and then maybe into a pink, maybe some alizarin with a lot of water, and then into a sienna. I'm looking for the colors underneath. I want to not go so dark here that it gets black and too heavy. I want it to have that sunny day feel. And then I'm going to superimpose the next darker colors and the next darker colors and the next darker colors. However, there are situations in watercolor where you break the protocol of going from light colors to dark colors. And the reason you would do that is if you want to manipulate the quality of the edge, and that is done by manipulating the consistency of the paint with regards to the degree of wetness or dryness of the paper. And some of that is going to happen here. But primarily we're going to get our lights in and then get some mediums and start going back and forth between the mediums and the darks. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a puddle of some cerulean blue. Runny mix because I need to do a beaded wash. I don't want to do this too dark. Again, I would rather err to the light side so that these areas in here don't become too dark. I want a wee bit of color to them. I don't want them to be all the way to black. Let's put a little cobalt in that too. Very runny mix. It is going to go downhill. I'm at about a 45-degree angle with the board here. Now, rinse that. Now I need to come up with I'm going to get some of the burnt sienna and a lot of water. Maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. I want a pale pinkish color and a lot of water. So what's going to happen is I'm going to switch to start up here with the blue. I'm going to paint through all this because these are darker. If you squint, even the yellows, greens, and things like that, they're all darker than the sky. So we don't have to worry about that. Then I'm going to, into this mix here, the sienna alizarin pink kind of color, I'm going to start adding a wee bit of yellow ochre as I come down to the front. So let's just get a little more of that in there just so we don't run out. Always mix more than you think you're going to need. You usually wind up mixing more. So here we go. Lay the brush in at the side, get it fully loaded, come across, create a bead. Pick up the bead from underneath. I'm going to get a little bit of water now, because I'm going to get paler. Dipping into water now, not the blue. So here's the palette. You can see I'm not dipping into that. I'm dipping into water. Now I'm going to go to the pink. Painting through everything. Some of the blue will migrate down past where I started it. At this point, I'm going to rinse the brush, and I'm going to get some of the yellow ochre. mix in there a very pale pinkish yellow ochre. And when this dries, it's going to look pretty pale when we start putting those other colors on. Painting through everything. Might just have a little bit stronger yellow ochre in the front, just to pull it forward. And this will need to be dried. There we go. So, hope this cord reaches. Let me mute this so you don't have to listen to it. All right, feels dry. Hi, Gina. Now, oh, look at that. That's okay. I touched it with a wet finger. There's going to be stuff down here. We're lucky. Now, working off of the colors that we already have, I'm going to start by putting in the yellow greens and the more duller, ruddier colors of this. Looks like some kind of, I don't know. We'll see. So we're going to get some bright yellow, mix into this. So I'm going to try to do this with one brush. Good luck. Going to make that slightly greener. Now what I'm mixing now is the lighter colors in the tree. I'm going to put a little bit of Prussian in. Ooh, maybe not that much. Yeah, that's okay. So, where is it? How big is it? Using the brush, holding it like a knife, not like a fork. These are the lighter colors. I might even splatter. Let's see if we can. Now that area there is not the same color, but I am going to, depending on the side of the brush, pushing against the point to get an irregular mark. Now, a little bit of burnt sienna into that blue. This is runny paint into runny paint. So it's going to give it a bit more blue. The colors are going to melt together because they're the same consistency. Should be painting that uphill the way it Gross. Meanwhile, this is getting... So when I come up into here, down here, I get a distinct mark because it's dry. But up here where I've applied paint, it melts in, which is what I want it to do, because I don't want it to I want it to disappear into the foliage. Hi, Charles. Okay, let's get some more yellow, green, and come through here. Let it mingle with this. It comes up to that statue. I'm getting a kind of an ochre color. I better get in here and get some straight bluish green. I want to miss the statue because there are some things. Again, I need to splatter maybe. Be careful, John. To get these appearance of these smaller leaves. I always find this makes it look more like that than if I were to paint it. You know, make a leaf here, leaf there, leaf there, leaf there, that kind of thing. So irregularize this edge. Bright yellow, green coming down here. Skipping some open marked areas. Now when I get to about here, and I could throw some of that in here and it'll melt because I need to start getting some Prussian blue that is thicker, slow moving, and maybe a little bit of this green, and touch into these areas where it is darker. So I'm squinting, I'm looking, where is it? Maybe even the cobalt for this area back here. So it's the lower end of the foliage group. And because the area is still wet, if I'm lucky, I have to, I thought about this before I did it. Where am I going to work first? Where am I going to work next? That kind of thing. Now I'm going to go right into that building. It seems funny to paint something like that the same as you would paint a tree, but it's not really. If you think about it, it's an area where it's come down on the tree. What we're seeing is the light is not getting to this area. I'm going to smuggle a little bit of burnt sienna into that. Come down where the tree, get its base, pull that out. There's another trunk going up here. Let's get some cobalt blue. Let that drop back. Some of the cobalt blue with the sky color that we had previously done. Now in here, I'm going to get into the turquoise actually. Cobalt turquoise. For any of you who are in the debut group, we didn't use that color. I didn't introduce it to you deliberately because it's like giving crack to children. It's the most addictive color. Thank you, Jan. Yeah, the birds, the birds are great this week, especially in the morning. Okay, now I'm going to pull some of that into here in places because I want this little bit of water to it. Let's splatter some of that too. When you splatter, always make sure the brush is pointing in the direction that the splatter is going to go. That way it won't go somewhere you don't want it to go. Another way to irregularize a mark, splatter or smear with your finger. Let's get a bit more of that going up here. Side of the brush, push against the point, smear with your finger. Do everything but paint little leaves. Okay, now get some burnt sienna, some ultramarine blue. Oops, yeah, that's ultramarine. Some of this blue here, and trunks. This trunk grouping. See, I made that wet, so when I do this, hopefully, when I bring it further up, it will melt into the foliage. Let's get some more blue on that. And if one of them is further away than the other, which this one is farther from us than this one, see if you can either, put a little water in it to lighten it or make it bluer or some kind of business going on back here. You can't make it out. Then I do that tree in the center of the plaza there. Some kind of thing back there. Now, compositionally, again, we have a lot of stuff. It's just this and this and this and this and this and this. I am looking for little darks that sneak over and connect to the next thing. This dark comes down here and sneaks over here and goes over that and then connects to that, comes down here, sneaks over here. Anything that will help you connect one side of the picture to the other vis-a-vis what the light is doing, that's just a very beneficial thing compositionally and visually. So I'm going to make this a wee bit darker here. Now, there are a lot of branches in here, I know. Probably should have a bit more crazy dark foliage up there too. Maybe a little in here, not much. Okay, now let's start making this thing occur. I'm going to take some of this blue that we had. I'm going to put turquoise in it and burnt sienna for a very slow moving dark. And I'm going to try to get, I'm going to put a head on this thing because it's obviously a figure on top of a plinth. And if we don't know the story behind it, or the viewer doesn't know the story behind it, or, they're going to think, you guy left the head off. Now, while that's wet, I'm rinsing the brush, drying it. I'm touching into some creamy turquoise. And it's going to melt into that turquoise sienna mix, I'm hoping. Ooh, now down here we've got some brilliant foliage that's getting, I'm just going to dip right into my yellow, which is always adulterated with some blue from someplace. Some of that there too. Yeah, look at, there's a bit of that business up there. One tip, if you do need to have a clean, bright yellow in your painting, it's usually good to squeeze some out fresh from the tube and use it right in the beginning, so that subsequent painting operations don't adulterate it with other colors. Now I'm putting some turquoise into that original sky color. And I'm going to try to get this very distant headland. Oh, I shouldn't make it that dark. Let's rinse that, bring some water to it. I want to make it look far away. This is probably just about dry enough that I can get some plain yellow ochre and maybe a bit of burnt sienna and attempt to paint this plinth, which it's cylindrical. And I'm going to get a little bit of the blue murky stuff and then I want to come down here and get some of that sienna, nondescript, little bit of everything, and pull across for the base. And that's not the last thing we're going to do to that. I might even touch a bit of that into the top here while it's still wet. Okay, now we need to mix up a kind of a clean, well, not clean, a grayish blue. So we've got some blue here from that sky, the cerulean. And I'm going to put a little bit of maybe a naphthol red or a burnt sienna into it to get a dull purpley color. And I'm going to start trying to do I'm going to work from the background towards the foreground. And coming off these trees back there, we're going to get the bollard. There's a shadow that comes over like so. Let's put a little more alizarin in that. Ooh, maybe not that much. Lavender. Oh, I love lavender. Holbein lavender. Okay. These are connectors. I don't know what they are. I'm having to name them. There's a shadow area back here, so anything that's in shadow you paint right through, whether it's a cast shadow or it's an object. There's that stone bench-like object. It does cast a bit of a shadow this way. This has, there's dappled shadow in the foreground, but the dapples are going to kind of connect in a, farther away, they're going to be not so dappled. But close up, they are going to be that way. So we're going to find them here. Some of that back there. Here's another one of those vertical things, which we don't know what it is. And there's this thing that's darker. It's rectangular and it's darker than the others, and it will later be made darker. So I'm running these things across to connect them. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Jackie. So I need to... Now these things don't always need to physically connect, but they do need to have the appearance of getting near enough. So let's get a little more strong blue in this and a little bit more alizarin. Ooh, and a little bit more water. More blue. Till you get the color you want. So I was trying to, that's kind of a, there's some dappled shadow. The shadows are going to be a tad bit darker closer to us and a tad bit lighter further away. So that's something to look out for. Now the right side of this one I'm going to touch because it is darker. The right side of this one I'm going to touch because it is darker. Same thing here. Same thing here. Well, I tell you, Kathy, there's nothing to painting something that's already gorgeous. The job is half done. I'm hoping to go to Portugal next year. So, okay, a little more cerulean and turquoise in this, and a bit more water. That's a bit of a mess up there, but I'm going to do this first. I'm going to notice that the shadows are coming in kind of like that. So and I'm going to do that on the side of my brush to get a broken stroke. And if I need it to be filled in a bit more, then I will do that from the tip. But from the side of the brush, I'm going to try and execute the main pattern of the shadow. And from the tip of the brush, I'm going to try to finesse it. Okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is dip into the ultramarine, and I'm going to watch that till it looks a little bit, that's too dark. You see there are darker and lighter areas in that, and I think it's because the darker bits are the cast shadow of, say, a trunk or a branch. That's darker, isn't it? This is much darker, but it's a browner dark. And this has a dark right side. when you've got two trees next to each other, there's three actually, and one's close, one's middle distance, and one's far, don't keep them all the same value. Make the front one darker or the back one darker. I'm going to make the back one in this instance. I'm going to put some connecting darks back here that I see. There is a light pole, but I think that's a bit too much to get involved in. So our focal point, our center of interest, is the headless statesman here. I left a little white rind here to kind of indicate some light that may be hitting the left side of the tree there. Now I'm going to darken this and that selectively so that it appears as though some light is getting to it in some places, but possibly not others. So maybe bring some of these out. I do need to pay a little bit of attention to the foliage up there. And I'm going to do that while this, oh no, this is about the stage I wanted. So I'm going to get the stiffer, the slower moving mix of blue, and I'm going to pull through, while it's wet, some of the dark marks. Into this so that it looks like there's some dappling, I hope. For example, that corner looks a little darker. And because the surface is still somewhat damp, the shape that I paint will tend to stay where I put it, but it will soften. That. There is a tree back here. I may have to go to a smaller brush for that. Okay, I've got two plinth-like objects back here. I'm going to make one of them a little bit darker than the other. And I'm going to make the far one darker, I think. So don't have the bases in the same place. I'm going to use this brownish mix to make little touches with the tip to suggest some people walking around. Why wouldn't there be people in a park this gorgeous? And then, of course, we'll cast a shadow. Now, what can we do to improve this area up here? I think it should be an irregular mark, which I may need to smear or something after I get it done. I know there's a lot of branches. That shape there is a little bit too inorganic, I think. I want to be careful where I put these sort of dark branches. Let's see, there's something occurring. Oh. Well, if I'd gotten to that a little earlier, I could have scraped out a Okay. Left side, right side of this thing could be a little bit darker. Okay. This brush, yeah, I'm really working towards finding a brush that I can use to execute an entire painting with one brush so that I'm in a mindset of just thinking about what I'm painting and not thinking about my equipment. And this one gets pretty close to it. And no surprise that it's an oriental brush. They've been using brushes for many more centuries than us. So it's a bit more dapple up here. And then I do think I want to put a little bit more warmth on the cylindrical area of that plinth. I want it to bleed down as if it were weathered. And I think I would like to have a little bit more pure yellow coming up here and out here. Maybe connecting the right to the left. Maybe a little bit more dark in here. Okay, let's peel and see what we get. So, can't remember. I need a clip. Let's get one up here to hold it. What a gorgeous place. I mean, boy, Pat, I hope she has some kind of exhibit of what she did there. If nothing else, just show her sketchbooks. Sketchbooks are so wonderful. She posted a few, and they looked they just made me, wow, don't you just want to go? So I think where I would go from here is get some little bright red or bright orange or something and make little blips and blops in key places to suggest people walking around. One could also do this with the whites or whatever. This looks a little confusing in here. I think this is where I would go in and maybe, yeah, it seems like there's some kind of shadow coming in from stage right, pulling this over. The thing is that what I liked about this as a compositional study, yeah, this wants to be darker. There we go. Oh, yeah, that's it. I think parts of this too. There we go. And probably this one. Yep, that was it. You have potentially all these disparate things which could get separated if you look at them in a separate manner. And see, there's that tree there, and I'm wondering whether I want it. So I will go to one smaller brush to use some of these ultra fine lines. It's not like the Chinese didn't have various sized brushes, they do. Okay, yeah, that's... some of these ones that bend down. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, the thing, hi Lisa. Nance, hello. Using these shadow shapes to connect these disparate things. If this was an overcast day and you didn't have any shadows, these things would just be sitting around like pieces on a chessboard or something with some broccoli. But these lovely shadow shapes perform these connecting functions that help us to... I'm going to suggest some doors or windows in a building. They may not actually be there, but there we go. Maybe the shoulders, it looked like there was a cape on this person. Anyway, that's that. And that's the... So when looking for a composition, look for, see those big shapes of where the light is getting, or where out here, or where the light is not getting, back in these shadow shapes, and look for connections, things that tie things together.